So the US government has partially ground to a halt for the first time in 17 years. Squabbling Democrats and Republicans couldn't find a way to agree a new budget, clashing over Obamacare, the current administration's high-profile reform of the health system. Now, the essential elements of the government, such as the military and national security, will continue to operate, but 800,000 workers are being put on unpaid leave and over 1 million are being forced to work despite their pay being delayed. When experts estimate that the political stalemate could cost the economy up to $55 billion. That's as much as the effects of Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. Services such as the courts, transport and the mail will continue to work, but they expect to experience difficulties and delays. Well, let's get more now, live from RT's political commentator Sam Sachs in Washington. Sam, so Obama's urging the Republicans, he's just done this in his speech to reopen government, saying that this shutdown is an ideological crusade. The thing is, will they listen to him?
Well, a few are listening to him. A few Republicans have come forward and say, look, we fought the fight here. We're losing the fight. It's time to just keep the government open and pass a spending bill. But leadership in the far-right caucus in the Republican Party here in the House isn't ready to listen. They're game planning right now in a meeting to figure out what their next step forward is now that the Senate has again rejected their attempts to defund Obamacare. And curiously, Budget Chairman Paul Ryan said earlier today that he thinks that ultimately, and he's a Republican, said that ultimately the debt limit a few weeks from now is going to be the thing that brings both parties together and comes up with a deal. Of course, the government being shut down for another 2 weeks until the debt limit hit could have enormous economic consequences moving forward.
Well, you're in Washington, D.C. What are the effects of the shutdown now in these very early stages?
Well, as you mentioned, about 800,000 federal employees are not receiving paychecks right now, and of course a bulk of them are here in D.C., as are a bulk of the museums and parks and federal parks that are all closed down. And of course, this is going to continue to have economic consequences. It's not just people with lost wages. Those people aren't spending money. Tourists aren't going to museums. They're not going to parks. Businesses are cutting back. If we go back to 1995 and 1996, the federal government shutdowns cost a little over $1 billion, and they were shut down for a week. So fast forward today, we can imagine that if the government continues to be shut down, we're talking losses of billions of dollars. And Moody's predicts, because of the economic consequences compounding week to week, that if we're shut down for 3 to 4 weeks, we're looking at a $55 billion hit to the economy, which would just be a self-inflicted wound by the US government.
And that would mean even more austerity for the Americans.
Right. Ultimately, this does come down to austerity. This is the 7th budget battle in the last 2.5 years between President Obama and congressional Republicans. And in the last 6, people who've been pushing austerity have won. We've seen austerity spending plan passed after austerity spending plan. And you could say that's happened because Republicans like to attach extra things to it, like defunding Obamacare. So when Democrats negotiate that away, the austerity spending limit stays in place. So whatever resolution we get to the government shutdown in the next days or weeks, it's going to be an austerity spending plan. And already the middle class in the United States is feeling the effects of this austerity, just as working people across the Atlantic in the European Union are feeling the effects of austerity over there with lower wages, and even we've seen suicide rates spike up, and deficits aren't getting any better over there.
RT's Sam Sachs, live in Washington, D.C. Thanks very much indeed for that update. Well, the government has risked shutdown a number of times in recent years, but lawmakers have always managed to avoid it by the skin of their teeth. Let's look back at the closest calls. Well, back in 2011, government closure was averted just 1 hour before the deadline. After a painful legislative standoff, a budget deal was finally agreed. The debt ceiling was another nerve-wracking issue in the summer of 2011. It made markets very nervous in America and around the world. In fact, made those markets tumble. But the sky didn't actually fall in then, as it was agreed upon a whole 2 days before the time was up. Now, it's been 17 years since the last time the government partially ceased operating, but it's actually the 18th time the US has taken a so-called spending gap. In 1977, the government was shut down 3 times in as many months. Well, London-based market strategist Mike Ingram told us America keeps stepping on the same rakes.
It makes them look like idiots, quite frankly. I mean, as you, I think, previously detailed, The government just about managed to avoid a shutdown 2.5 years ago, and at that point in time, credit agency Standard & Poor's downgraded US debt from its AAA status, and one of the reasons they gave was they said, well, you know, this country is becoming ungovernable. There's no visibility on what your fiscal policy is, because politicians are just playing with fire year after year. And here we are again now, 2013, in the same situation. And I would have to say that even once a deal is finally thrashed out this time round, and one must hope that that will actually happen, we're probably going to be in the same sort of situation next year.